It's not every day that a preseason game turns into a soap opera, but when you're talking about the Cleveland Browns quarterback room in 2025, you're talking about one of the most volatile storylines in the NFL. The setting, a sweltering August evening. The Browns are locked in a meaningless on-paper preseason matchup against the Carolina Panthers. But for the guys in the quarterback room, especially Dillon, Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders, this game is anything but meaningless. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. This is a battle for the soul of the team's future. One of them will take the reins as the starter. One will be the guy. The other, just another name on Cleveland's long curse list of what could have been. And on this night, the spotlight didn't just belong to Shedeur Sanders. It clung to him. From the moment Sanders stepped on the field, there was a calm about him. He stood in the pocket, cool as ice, eyes scanning, footwork crisp, every throw looking like it belonged in a highlight reel. His passes weren't just completions, they were statements. A 15-yard laser to the sideline, a perfect fade over the corner's shoulder, a quick slant that hit the receiver in stride for a chain-moving first down. On the other sideline, Dillon Gabriel, helmet on, chin strap unbuckled, staring out at the field with the look of someone watching his own window slam shut in real time. The cameras caught it. The tight jaw, the 1,000-yard stare, the kind of expression that says, "That should be me out there," but it wasn't. And that's when the tension that had been simmering since training camp boiled over. A rivalry fueled by bad blood. Let's rewind. This wasn't just two guys competing for a job. This was personal. Training camp had been a pressure cooker for weeks. Gabriel came in with the pedigree of a top college passer, expected by some to be the natural successor to Cleveland's QB woes. Sanders, meanwhile, was the intriguing prospect with a famous last name. Someone many assumed would need time to adjust before truly challenging for the role. But that narrative didn't last long. By mid-July, Sanders was outshining Gabriel in drills. The turning point came on July 28th, when the two reportedly got into a heated verbal exchange after red zone period. Teammates had to step between them. 2 days later, things escalated into what insiders called a near brawl after Gabriel accused Sanders of showboating following a touchdown pass. The Browns downplayed it publicly, but the writing was on the wall. This wasn't a friendly competition anymore. It was a battle with egos on the line. The August 1st disaster. Gabriel's frustration wasn't just about Sanders. It was about his own play. On August 1st, during a pivotal training camp session, Gabriel turned in a brutal 3 for 14 passing performance. It wasn't just the numbers. It was the body language. Missed reads, overthrows, dropped shoulders. Coaches took notice, and the reps that followed tilted even more in Sanders' favor. That day might have been the moment the competition started to slip away. The suspension. Then came the breaking point. After yet another heated exchange with Sanders in early August, Gabriel was hit with an indefinite suspension for conduct detrimental to the team. While details were scarce, insiders say the altercation crossed a line the coaching staff couldn't ignore. Gabriel was sidelined while Sanders continued to stack positive days and build rapport with the offense. The timing couldn't have been worse for Gabriel. Not only was he losing practice reps, but he was losing visibility. And in a competition this tight, out of sight means out of mind. Injury adds to the spiral. Just as Gabriel's suspension was lifted, he was dealt another blow, a minor but untimely injury that kept him from fully participating in the days leading up to the Panthers game. Sanders, meanwhile, was healthy, sharp, and ready to seize a moment. When game day arrived, Gabriel was dressed but mostly relegated to the sidelines. Sanders got the nod for extended preseason action, and that's when things got ugly. The meltdown. As Sanders orchestrated drive after drive, cameras kept cutting to Gabriel. At first, he was stoic. Then the fidgeting started. Then the muttering under his breath. And then, after a particularly impressive Sanders completion on 3rd and long, Gabriel slammed his helmet onto the bench. It wasn't a subtle toss. It was a statement throw, the kind that echoes off the Gatorade coolers. Teammates tried to talk to him, but he waved them off, pacing the sideline. One assistant coach even put a hand on his shoulder, only for Gabriel to shrug it off. By the fourth quarter, Gabriel was sitting alone at the end of the bench, arms crossed, staring at the scoreboard as Sanders continued to rack up completions. A tale of two quarterbacks. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. On one side, Sanders was a picture of composure, encouraging teammates after plays, smiling between drives, keeping his focus locked in. On the other, Gabriel looked like a man watching his opportunity slip away in real time. The Browns' quarterback history is littered with names who couldn't handle the pressure. Couch, Quinn, Whedon, Manziel, Mayfield. Each came in with promise, only to crumble under the weight of expectation and dysfunction. For many in Cleveland, Gabriel's meltdown felt uncomfortably familiar. Why Sanders' rise sting for Gabriel? For Gabriel, this isn't just losing a position battle. It's losing control of the narrative. He came into camp with the expectation of being the guy, and now he's the second storyline in a saga that's being headlined by Sanders' poise, accuracy, and growing fan support. Even in preseason, moments matter. Sanders showing against the Panthers wasn't just about stats. It was about optics. He looked like a leader. He looked like someone you could build around. And that's the part that must gnaw at Gabriel the most. It wasn't just a better performance. It was a better impression. The weight of the Browns' past. In Cleveland, the quarterback position carries a unique kind of baggage. The fans have been burned so many times that they latch onto any sign of hope like it's the second coming. Sanders is giving them that hope. Gabriel? Right now, he's giving them deja vu. And when you're fighting for a job in a city that's seen more failed QB experiments than playoff appearances in the last 2 decades, perception can be just as important as production. What happens next? Officially, the Browns are still calling this an open competition. Unofficially, the gap is widening. Sanders is stacking positive performances. Gabriel is stacking bad optics. And the momentum is tilting hard in one direction. Gabriel still has time to turn it around, but it's a shrinking window. He'll need to deliver a flawless week of practice, mend relationships in the locker room, and hope Sanders stumbles. And based on the way Sanders has been carrying himself, that last part seems unlikely. Final take. The Browns wanted competition. They got a drama. Sanders is a rising star with ice in his veins. Gabriel is a frustrated challenger, watching the sands slip through the hourglass. And if August 8th was any indication, the QB future in Cleveland might already be decided. Because in the NFL, especially in Cleveland, you don't just win the job by throwing touchdowns. You win it by convincing everyone in the building, players, coaches, fans, that you belong. Gabriel's sideline eruption wasn't just a bad look. It was a kind of moment that lives longer than a preseason box score. In Cleveland, where fans build an almost superstitious sensitivity to quarterback behavior, body language tells as much of a story as touchdown passes do. And Gabriel's body language that night screamed frustration, isolation, and an unraveling confidence. The irony? A few months earlier, he'd been billed as one of the most competitive young quarterbacks in the league. Coaches and scouts praised his fire, saying it would translate into leadership and resilience. But fire, if it's not controlled, can burn your own house down. And in this case, it was burning in full view of cameras, teammates, and the thousands of fans in attendance. The tension that never cooled. Even after the game ended and the team jogged off the field, the atmosphere between Gabriel and Sanders was ice cold. Sanders exchanged handshakes and quick words with several teammates, looking relaxed. Gabriel? He walked straight to the tunnel without a word, helmet under his arm, avoiding eye contact with everyone in his path. In the locker room, you could feel the divide. A few veteran players tried to keep things light, but the energy around Gabriel was tense. When asked about situation post-game, Sanders stayed diplomatic. The classic rookie move to avoid pouring gas on the fire. "I'm just here to play my game and help the team," he said. Dillon's a competitor, and I respect that. It was a kind of answer that subtly wins people over, measured, humble, and non-confrontational. Meanwhile, Gabriel declined to speak to reporters, which only fueled the narrative that he was sulking. Training camp flashbacks. The seeds of this meltdown were planted back in late July, when the two quarterbacks first started taking reps side by side in live drills. Every pass was a silent contest. Every completion or miss became a small victory or loss in the bigger war. When Sanders hit a streak of consecutive completions in a 7-on-7 period, Gabriel immediately tried to one-up him with deep throws, only to overthrow 2 straight passes. You could see the competitive edge harden into visible frustration. Coaches noticed, players noticed, and the whispers started, not about Sanders' potential, everyone saw that, but about Gabriel's reactions. The 3-for-14 day that changed everything. In quarterback competitions, there's usually one day that shifts the balance. For Gabriel, it was August 1st. The 3-for-14 performance wasn't just bad statistically. It was bad for his confidence. And worse, it happened in front of most of the team, plus media members who quickly spread the story. Players talk. They compare notes. And when one QB can't seem to string together positive reps while the other is putting on a clinic, it starts to shape opinions fast. From that day on, every mistake Gabriel made felt magnified. The suspension that opened the door. When Gabriel's altercation with Sanders led to an indefinite suspension in early August, it wasn't just a disciplinary move. It was an unplanned audition for Sanders to take the lead role without competition breathing down his neck. And Sanders took full advantage. While Gabriel was away from the team, Sanders dominated reps in practice, building rhythm with the starting receivers and earning nods from defensive leaders. The chemistry showed almost immediately in preseason games. By the time Gabriel returned, the momentum was gone, watching the franchise history loom over them. Here's the thing. In most NFL cities, a rookie versus rookie QB battle is exciting. In Cleveland, it's terrifying. The city's quarterback history reads like a cautionary tale. Endless changes, wasted talent, and missed opportunities. Fans have seen quarterbacks fold under pressure before. They've seen meltdowns, injuries, and quiet fade-outs. That history doesn't just hover over the players. It presses down on them. Sanders, to his credit, hasn't seemed weighed down by it. If anything, he's been unshakable. Gabriel, on the other hand, looks like he's carrying every bad headline before it's even written. How Sanders' composure stole the room. The biggest contrast between the two isn't just performance, it's perception. Sanders doesn't need to shout to lead. He doesn't need to over-celebrate a touchdown to feel confident. Every move he makes feels intentional, measured, and focused on the next play. That's why veterans gravitate toward him. Offensive linemen talk about how clear his pre-snap calls are. Receivers love the way he trusts them to win their routes. Even defensive backs respect how quickly he adjusts after mistake. Gabriel's approach is the opposite. Emotional highs and lows, visible frustration, an almost urgent need to prove himself in every throw. That kind of energy can be exciting when it works, but exhausting when it doesn't. The preseason game that may have sealed it. The Panthers game on August 8th didn't just showcase Sanders' accuracy and poise. It showcased his ability to make smart plays under pressure, rolling out to avoid a collapsing pocket. He found his check down instead of forcing a throw downfield. Later, he fit a tight window pass between 2 defenders for a first down that had the sideline buzzing. Each drive felt like he was adding another brick to his case for the starting job. Meanwhile, Gabriel stood on the sideline, every Sanders completion pushing him further into the shadows. When the game ended, social media lit up. Clips of Sanders' best throws were shared alongside still shots of Gabriel looking frustrated on the bench. Narratives were forming in real time, and none of them favored Gabriel. The locker room divide. By the following week, it wasn't just about performance anymore. It was about trust. You could sense a subtle shift. More players were talking about Sanders as the guy. Coaches were deflecting questions about the competition instead of giving equal praise to both. For a quarterback, that's a dangerous spot to be in. Once the locker room starts leaning toward someone else, it's nearly impossible to pull them back without something dramatic changing. The path forward for Gabriel. If Gabriel's going to salvage this, he'll have to do 3 things, and fast. First, he has to win back the respect of his teammates. That means no more sideline outbursts, no more visible frustration when things don't go his way. Second, he has to stack flawless practices. In competitions this close, even one bad day can undo a week of good ones. And third, he has to hope Sanders stumbles, not in a malicious way, but in the sense that he needs a door to crack open again. The problem? Sanders hasn't shown any sign of giving him that opportunity. Why this matters for Cleveland? This isn't just a rookie rivalry. This is about the Browns trying to finally break their cycle of quarterback instability. Picking the wrong guy, or letting the wrong guy walk, could set the team back years. Sanders looks like the safer bet right now. Calm, consistent, and already winning over the building. Gabriel still has the raw tools, but tools without control aren't enough in this league. And with every week that passes, it feels less like a two-man race and more like Sanders' job to lose. The tension didn't just vanish once the Panthers game ended. In the days that followed, you could almost feel it hanging over every snap in practice. Sanders carried himself the same way he had since camp started. Steady, calm, laser focus on execution. Gabriel, though, moved like someone who was trying to outrun a shadow. Every drill felt like a test he couldn't afford to fail. And when you play with that kind of pressure sitting on your shoulders, the mistakes multiply. Teammates saw it. When Sanders missed a throw, he simply reset, slapped his hands together, and moved on. When Gabriel missed, there was a lingering shake of the head, the muttered frustration, the kind of visible self-critique that makes everyone else in the huddle tense up. Football at this level is as much about trust as it is talent. And every time Gabriel let his frustration bleed into the play, he chipped away at that trust. For Sanders, trust was being built without him even talking about it. It came from little things. Walking over to a receiver after an incompletion to explain where the ball was meant to be, asking a lineman if protection call felt right, nodding to a running back after a blitz pickup. It was those small, invisible moments that made guys want to play for him. The veterans in the room started to notice. And in a quarterback competition, once the veterans start leaning one way, the tide gets hard to reverse. Gabriel knew the optics weren't in his favor. But the problem was, every attempt to correct them only seemed to highlight them. One afternoon, he stayed after practice to throw extra routes with the third-string receivers. It was the kind of move that's usually applauded, but by then, reporters had already locked onto the Sanders storyline. Gabriel working late didn't read as leadership. It read as desperation. That's how brutal the narrative game can be when you're fighting for a starting job. The next preseason game was supposed to be his rebound. Coaches split reps more evenly that week, giving Gabriel a real chance to prove he could move the offense with the same efficiency Sanders had shown. The first series started well. A short pass over the middle, a clean handoff, a nice completion on second down. Then came the misread. Gabriel locked onto his first option, never saw the linebacker drifting underneath, and threw an interception that got returned deep into Browns territory. In preseason, those moments are magnified. You could feel the collective sigh from the sideline. Sanders came in later and ran 2 clean drives. No touchdowns, but no mistakes. He was surgical, keeping the ball moving, controlling the tempo. It wasn't flashy, but it was what coaches crave. Predictability. That was the night the whispers in the stands grew louder. Fans started chanting his name between plays. Cleveland's faithful, used to instability under center, were already staking their hopes on the rookie who didn't flinch. Gabriel's frustration finally spilled over after that game. Reporters caught him leaving the locker room early, head down, skipping the usual post-game chats with teammates. On the flight back, he kept himself. Some guys brushed it off as the emotions of competition, but others knew how damaging it could be. Quarterbacks are expected to be the emotional anchor of a team, and the last thing anyone wants is a leader who looks like he's checked out. By mid-August, the competition looked more like a coronation. Sanders was taking a growing share of reps with the first-team offense, and Gabriel was working more often with the backups. It wasn't official, but everyone could see what was happening. The Browns weren't making a big announcement. They didn't have to. Every snap in practice told the story. Sanders looked like the quarterback the team could build around, and Gabriel looked like the one still trying to figure out how to stop the slide. The Browns' history only made the stakes higher. Fans could rattle off a list of failed quarterbacks like a roll call. Couch, Garcia, Fry, Quinn, Whedon, Manziel, Kaiser, Mayfield. Some had the talent, but not the discipline. Others had the discipline, but not the mental toughness. What Cleveland wanted now was someone who could blend both. In Sanders, they saw the possibility of that balance. In Gabriel, they saw the warning signs of a pattern they were desperate to break. Every so often, Gabriel would flash the talent that got him here. A perfectly thrown seam route. A scramble that extended a play and turned into a big gain. Those moments were reminders that the arm talent and mobility were real. But they weren't coming often enough, and they weren't coming in the situations that mattered most. Sanders, on the other hand, wasn't just flashing. He was stringing together steady, mistake-free stretches that made the offense feel stable. The locker room divide was never about choosing favorites. It was about who gave the team the best chance to win. And the truth was becoming harder to ignore. Linemen trusted Sanders to get the ball out on time, so they wouldn't have to block forever. Receivers trusted him to place the ball where only they could catch it. Running backs trusted him to check into the right play when the defensive front shifted. That collective trust is what turns a quarterback from the guy taking snaps into the guy leading the offense. Gabriel's challenge now was psychological as much as it was physical. He had to find a way to steady himself, to stop letting every rep feel like the weight of the season rested on it. Because in reality, coaches notice more than just completions. They notice how you recover from incompletions. They notice whether you can keep the offense engaged after a mistake. And in that category, Sanders was quietly outperforming him at every turn. By the third preseason game, the contrast was almost symbolic. Sanders walked onto the field to cheers, drove the offense with a calm rhythm, and walked off the pats on a helmet from half the roster. Gabriel came in, overthrew a deep ball on the first play, and you could almost feel the collective shoulders drop. It wasn't fair. Preseason games aren't designed for perfect execution, but perception is a ruthless judge. In the days after, media chatter turned from who will win the job to when will the Browns make it official. Gabriel didn't say much publicly, but his demeanor said plenty. Less joking in the locker room, more sitting quietly at his stall, staring at the playbook. Sanders, meanwhile, just kept doing what he'd been doing since camp started, showing up, putting in work, and never giving the impression he was getting caught up in the drama. The Browns front office knew the risk of making a decision too early. They'd seen promising quarterbacks collapse under early pressure, but they'd also seen competitions drag out so long that the team's chemistry suffered. This was the balance they were weighing, and every Sanders completion and Gabriel misstep was pushing the scales. If there was one moment that seemed to sum it all up, it came during a midweek practice. The offense was backed up against its own goal line. Sanders took the snap, recognized the blitz, and calmly dumped the ball off to his running back for a quick gain that got them breathing room. Gabriel took the next series in the same situation, saw the same blitz, and tried to force a throw into tight coverage. It was tipped and intercepted. In the space of 2 plays, the entire argument for who was more game-ready had been laid bare. As August wound down, it became harder and harder to picture Gabriel winning the job, not because he lacked talent, but because in the NFL, talent is only half the battle. Composure, decision-making, and the ability to keep an entire unit steady under pressure, that's what makes a starter. And right now, Sanders had all of it. Gabriel was still trying to hold on to some of it. If this continues, the decision might not even be framed as a choice. It'll be framed as a natural progression of the preseason. The rookie who took control from day one, and the other rookie who let the frustration of the fight cloud his game. In Cleveland, where quarterback stories rarely have happy endings, this could be the start of one. For Sanders, it's a chance to rewrite history. For Gabriel, it's a warning that in this league, meltdowns are remembered just as much as comebacks.